Entitled Dad steals boat motor, acts as his own attorney during the criminal trial, has fool for a client. I'm a long time lurker and this is my first post. Although kids were not involved in this story, ED mentioned them during his testimony, so this story seemed like it may fit here. Cast: me, overworked prosecutor ED. Entitled Dad. There have been cases in this forum that resulted in the EP being arrested, and I thought there may be some interest as to what happens after the arrest. This happened many years ago when I was a deputy prosecutor handling misdemeanor cases. In this particular case, there was a street on a private beach with a series of houses in a remote area. There were other places that had public beach access and this particular place was off the main road and not easily accessible. There was no reason to be there unless you were a resident of one of the houses or was visiting someone there. The ED drove into the neighborhood and stole a boat motor from one of the properties. A neighbor watched him put the motor into his truck, got the license plate number, and called the police. A deputy responded and pulled him over a short time later. The deputy found the boat motor in the back of the truck and ED admitted he took it. ED was cited for misdemeanor theft. He wasn't taken into custody, but given a notice to appear in court. This was typical for a non-violent property offense. I then got the case. So I was minding my own business, working in my office, when ED called and demanded to speak to me. He then demanded that I dismiss the charge against him. He didn't really have a coherent reason as to why, since he pretty much had been caught red-handed. He mainly yelled and was obnoxious. Legal tip #1, yelling at the prosecutor will not result in criminal charges going away. But it will result in having to deal with a cranky prosecutor. When he couldn't bully me into dismissing the charge, he then demanded that another prosecutor be assigned to his case. This did not happen. Legal tip #2, people charged with crimes don't get to choose the prosecutors on their cases. The case is set for trial, he pleads not guilty, and elects to represent himself. At trial, I call as witnesses the neighbor, the boat motor owner, and the arresting deputy. ED presents a beachcombing defense that if he is able to keep a pretty shell he finds at the beach, he ought to be able to keep a boat motor. It didn't make a lot of sense. It really got interesting when he called himself as his own witness. He questioned himself by having a conversation with himself. Here is an example of how some of the actual testimony went. ED shifts to left side of the witness chair. Mr. ED's last name. Do you have a motive to steal a boat? ED then shifts to the right side of the witness chair and looks at empty space that he had just occupied. No, I do not have a motive to steal a boat. ED slides to the left. Mr. ED's last name. Do you like seafood? ED slides right. No, I do not like seafood. My kids do not like seafood. My wife likes seafood, but that's not a motive to steal boat. I looked over at the arresting deputy, who was sitting next to me as my designated law enforcement representative. He was watching with a horrified expression and I saw his lips silently form the words "what the frick?" Later, when we were outside, the deputy told me how freaky he thought it was. It took the jury 15 minutes to find him guilty. I don't remember specifically what he got as a sentence, but it was likely only fines and community service, since that was typical for that type of offense. EP needs to pee, so she forces me off the toilet. This happened many years ago, but it still pisses me off. I was a kid at the time, around 7 or 8. Me and my parents were at the local laundromat. It was a newer place and quite nice. The bathrooms were large, but only had one toilet, not multiple stalls. I really had to go, so I stepped away from where I was sitting with them watching an Ernest movie. Think it was Ernest Goes to Camp. I went into the bathroom to do my business and forgot to lock the door. Immediately after I get seated, EP comes in and says, "Me and my kid have to use the restroom really bad, can you hurry up?" At this point I could feel all ability to do a basic human function shut off. I tried to, but couldn't. She stood there huffing and puffing with her arms crossed waiting for me to get done. I apologized and said I'm having trouble. After a couple minutes Em grabs my arm, lifts me up, and wipes me, sets me aside, and uses the toilet. I was so confused, embarrassed, and felt violated really. I told my dad immediately. I whispered so the lady couldn't hear. I don't remember the exact wording as this was some time ago, but he got the attention of the man that ran the new place. He was there at the time, told him what happened, and told them off. She went to explain that they really had to go, but of course that made no difference. She had to get her wet clothes out, pack her stuff, and was banned from the place. To this day I can't even begin to imagine WTF was going through her head, and how she thought it was okay. EK terrifies my dog. EP stands and laughs. Context about my dog. So he's getting old now, and he's really quite shy of new people, but he'll never do anything to hurt anyone. So me and him were just chilling at a park near where we live, and this kid runs over to us and starts tugging at his tail and ears and kissing and cuddling him. He was clearly terrified, and bearing in mind we are in a pandemic right now, I was not at all comfortable with this. I told the kid to stop and go back to her parents, but I looked over to them, and they were stood there laughing and saying how cute she looks. She was literally terrifying my poor dog. How is that in the slightest bit cute? I told them to take their kid away, but they were clearly in no hurry as my poor boy had his tail tucked in between his legs and was shaking. So yeah, this just happened. And it annoyed me so much that I came to Reddit to rant about it. Gas station Karen gets the reverse, so I made my usual stop at the local gas station this morning, only to find the parking lot full of cars. I expected to find a line, but as soon as I walk in the door I'm greeted by a woman, the Karen of our story, along with her 6 crotch goblins. They are raiding the candy rack, and she obviously has no control of the situation, nor does she seem to care. They are blocking off the main access to the store, and a gentleman, the hero of the story, walks in behind me. Myself being a non-confrontational person, am assessing the safest way around as he politely says excuse me, so I step to the side. He makes the same approach to the Karen and her kids, to which she angrily snaps her head up at him and says, "I'm sorry, can't you see my children are picking out their candy? You can wait, it will only take a second." He looks back at me, to which I just shrug and opt to go around the tight back aisles, avoiding the stock boxes on the floor. He follows me, and we both come around at the drink coolers, where I proceed to snag a drink. Guy does the same, and just as I'm about to move on, the dreaded throat clearing erupts from behind us. "You two are unbelievable. My children were about to get a drink and you just shoved your way around them. Do either of you have any manners?" Guy smiles and says, "My friend, I were just grabbing our drink." "You can wait, it will only take a second." Her face turned red, but she kept her mouth shut. As I had suspected, the line was not short, and I managed to make it there before this evil woman, but now had to endure the entire clan behind me. They were whining, complaining, and kept leaving the line to get more things. It was like she was running a circus or something. I saw the cashier kept looking in her direction, and I could see the dread on her face that told me this was not the end of my adventure with this woman. Then I hear one of the children say, "Mommy, look, they have pizza." I noticed there were 3 slices left, and she was trying to figure out how they could split them evenly. I'm now trying to justify buying all of these slices when my hero walks over and helps himself to the last 3 slices on the warmer. I didn't have to look back to know what was coming, and there it was in a voice that echoed through the store. "Hey asshole, those belong to my kids. They asked for them first, so you better give them to me now." He smiled and said, "Lady, if you wanted them, you should have gotten them." She huffed, "You obviously don't need all of those, so at least give me 2. "There is no way you need 3 slices, that big." He grinned, "Sure I do. 1 for now, and the other 2 for my 2 breaks at work." I love this guy. She starts screeching at the guy in the language of the Karens, and I just try to tune her out. The children start screaming and crying when at last she turns her attention to the cashier and starts demanding she make more pizza. The cashier looks at her and says, "Our policy is that pizza can only be made in downtime intervals, and it being a holiday would probably be a while, seeing as she was the only one running the store." Karen, that's bullcrap. I come in here all the time and know the owner. Let me speak to him right now. I'm going to have you fired and this man removed from the store. At this point I'm laughing to myself because I do know the owner and I see the biggest grin come across the cashier's face. That's funny because I know all the regulars in this store and I have never seen you before. As for talking to the owner, would you like to speak with me or my husband? Karen shut up and snatched everything from her children. She started stuffing it anywhere she could and shoved her screaming horde out the door. Guy still bought the pizza and between him, myself, and the cashier we all shared a good laugh. I mean, I know holidays can bring out the worst in people, but damn. Like and share for more videos.